Tom Clancy's ENDWAR is a game I could talk about for hours and hours. I've played the crap out of the game, I've read the lore, I've watched the developer logs, I've even read the first novel that was written for ENDWAR, and you know what, speaking of which, this guy, David Michaels, yeah, that's not a real person. So while I was researching for the retrospective, I found that David Michaels is actually a pseudonym for Ubisoft's writing team so that they can publish novels into the official Tom Clancy's universe. So yeah, I pretty much knew everything there was to know about ENDWAR until you guys came along and said that you only played ENDWAR on the Nintendo DS. Yeah, there's an ENDWAR on Nintendo DS. I'm not kidding. I did not know ENDWAR was released for the DS and for the PSP. Well, that night I went on eBay and I bought a game card for $4. Then I dug through the closet to find the DS that I borrowed from a friend 4 years ago. Oh, and hey, Matt, if you're listening,
I still have your DS. If you ever want to see it again, leave $10,000 in unmarked bills under the bench by the library tomorrow at 2 p.m. Do not go to the police. Do not test me.
Sorry. I just blacked out there for a minute. Where was I again? Oh yeah, ENDWAR on DS.
This guy is unbelievable.
So I've rewritten how to start this section about a dozen times now, and well, I've come to the conclusion that there's no point in really trying to set this up. I just have to show you. So take a moment, take a deep breath. Okay, here goes. This is Tom Clancy's ENDWAR on the Nintendo DS.
What? What is that? What is that? Planes? Boats? Speedboats? Submarine? Is that a motherfucking submarine? Why are there submarines in my ENDWAR game?
Now, when I think of ENDWAR, I think of Unit 4, Attack Hostile 3, WMD Sierra, Airstrike Hostile 2. You you killed my unit. You know what I don't think? Hi, yeah, could you just maybe move like 6 hexes forward and prepare to attack the enemy artillery on the next phase? Yeah, thank you. So obviously, there's no way you can take all of this and fit it into one of these. So instead, what we have here is a turn-based strategy game that's set in the ENDWAR universe. All 3 factions are here. You've got the American Joint Strike Force, the European Federation Enforcer Corps, and the Spetsnaz Guard Brigade. There are a few other references to events that lead up to World War III, but that's about the extent of the similarities between the games. We'll come back to that in a minute. ENDWAR on DS and PSP is an anomaly. If you go searching for articles, reviews, videos, or just anybody talking about this game, you'll find next to nothing. The Wikipedia page lists that ENDWAR on the DS and PSP is a turn-based strategy game, and it cites a GameSpot article from October of 2008 that contains only a few paragraphs. It took some digging through Metacritic, but I was able to find a handful of written reviews, none of which go into very much detail about the game, and those also only give a few paragraphs. So yeah, we're on our own with this one. ENDWAR on DS and PSP. Oh god, I'm getting really tired of saying that. Listen, I'm just gonna call it ENDWAR on the DS. The footage I'm using is from both versions. I know it's also on the PSP. You know it's also on the PSP. He, she, me, we all know it's on the PSP. Now I don't want to see any comments below about how I'm talking about the DS version and not the PSP version, okay? Speaking of, maybe you could drop a comment down below if you like this video. Maybe click that subscribe button too. Okay, moving on. ENDWAR on the DS was developed by German game development studio Fnatic Software, known for such great games as Cultures Online, Cultures 2, and everyone's favorite, Catan, The First Island. So obviously these guys hadn't exactly made it to the big leagues yet, but hey, ENDWAR on the consoles was developed by Ubisoft Shanghai, and that's pretty much Ubisoft's C team. Outside of that, I can't find anything else that is related to the development of this game. And you can really tell that Ubisoft didn't care about this one because they never announced that it was coming out. IGN and GameSpot first reported on this game 3 weeks before it was released, and only because it showed up in the GameStop database. So the story is the most interesting part for me. I've always thought that the ENDWAR universe was really cool with its near future tech and this World War III setting. Unfortunately, the story in the console versions is very underwhelming, so I was really looking forward to having more story in this universe. In this version, there are 3 separate campaigns, one for each faction. Each campaign has 30 missions, and each mission has a story section before and after the mission. The 3 factions campaigns are further broken down into 3 conflict areas with about 10 missions each. All 3 factions campaigns feature the same maps and battle battlefields, with the story being told from that faction's perspective. There's a cast of characters here as well to explain the events of what's going on and to provide an actual narrative for World War III. It's kind of refreshing to have a legitimate narrative being told in the ENDWAR universe. Of course, that narrative encapsulates everything we've come to expect from a Tom Clancy novel. You know, America good, Europe's united, someone from Russia wants to use a dirty bomb to start a global world war. You are the commander.
Commander?
This guy, this smooth-brained marsupial is the face that they chose to represent the player character. To be fair, each faction does have its own player character portrait. The EFEC has this mongoloid, the JSF has what I can only describe as a 35-year-old AA baseball player, and the Spetsnaz have... Wait, is that Tom Haverford?
Treat yourself.
Each faction has two other characters to help tell the story. There's a low-level soldier that will continually ask questions and is supposed to be the comedic relief. They will frequently say the dumbest thing I've ever heard about not needing their weapon or that every warning signal is a training exercise. It gets old very quickly. The player character is guided by their general. The JSF's general is General Gunsight, a Tom Clancy name if there ever was one. The Russians are led by General Dostoy.
What in God's holy name are you blathering about?
And the EFEC is led by General Havelock. Wait, General Havelock? Who the f is General Havelock? Where's General Amadou de Banco? Hey you, say the thing. Say the thing.
For Europa, Colonel. Victory always.
Why not use the same characters from the Tom Clancy's universe that you've already licensed and created? Where's Izatov with his thick cartoon accent? Where's Scott Mitchell? Speaking of, did you know that Scott Mitchell in ENDWAR is voiced by Steve Bloom? If you don't know the name Steve Bloom, let me just play some of the characters he's voiced.
Got a show to do here.
It's gonna be close.
You have a warrior soul.
This guy gets me ready to go to war. Remember how I said I was really excited for the story and I was really interested? Yeah, no, that's gone now. We're done with that. The story doesn't follow the other version of ENDWAR at all. A quick recap of the ENDWAR story. A nuke kills 6 million people and obliterates Saudi Arabia. Russia gets rich off of oil money, then funds a terrorist group to wreak havoc on the US, EFEC, and on themselves to avoid suspicion. The US wants to make Helldivers a reality, so Russia causes an EFEC space laser to shoot down the space shuttle, and World War III ensues. See, other reviewers, you don't need 20 minutes to explain it. In the DS version, none of that happens. Russia just straight up attacks EFEC installations and then tries to capture London. And that's how the game starts. There's no explanation of why there's the EFEC or the JSF or the Spetsnaz Guard Brigade. Why are there these three factions? What has led up to this point? Nope, none of it's explained. The three conflict areas aren't even the same as the other ENDWAR. Sure, both of them have Northern Europe, but in this version, Russia invades via the English Channel and seeks to capture London. In the console version, the UK separated from the European Federation and wasn't involved in the conflict at all. After Russia's attempts to secure London are repelled, they turn their attention toward reclaiming Alaska and its oil fields. When that fails, they then attempt to attack Europe via their southern flank in the Middle East. At some point during the Middle East section, the Russian President Ivanov becomes a war criminal and decides to steal plutonium warheads and plant a dirty bomb on a civilian aircraft. The JSF learns of this plan and stops it and stamps out the remainder of Ivanov's forces. At least, that's how it plays out if you're playing as the JSF or as the EFEC. It's really strange. When you're playing as the JSF or as the EFEC, both factions are helping each other against the Russian invasions. There's no conflict between the JSF and the EFEC. It's just Russia bad. In fact, Russia is so bad that they're locked until you complete at least one of the two other campaigns. Now, when you're playing as the Russians, you are winning in the conflict areas and you're securing the territories. And then suddenly the game turns on a dime between the final two missions. For the second to last mission, you're defending against the JSF assault. And in the final mission, you're defending a meeting between all three governments to establish a new peace. I wish I could explain more, but I'm just gonna admit it. I didn't finish the campaigns. Everything I'm telling you is what's explained in the pre-mission backgrounds and in the story sections at the start of the missions. There really shouldn't be that much of a gap between the start of one mission and the start of the next. So if you played all the way through this on the DS or on the PSP, let me know what actually happens in the comments below. It's a shame that I can't do this game justice. Rather, I won't do it because I just can't subject myself to the gameplay any longer. The most glaring and obvious change is that this is a turn-based strategy game instead of a real-time tactics game. Calling it a turn-based strategy game is a little inaccurate too. It's more like a turn-based puzzle game. The missions start with your units and your opponent's units already selected and deployed in predefined positions. Your goal is usually to defeat a specific enemy type by the end of a certain turn, say defeat all enemy infantry by the end of turn 6, or to capture or defend a point of interest on the map. The points of interest are typically a depot or a harbor or an airfield where you can create more units and store a unit to heal it. Turns occur in 2 phases, with you and the enemy choosing your orders at the same time. While you're in the movement phase, the enemy is choosing targets for their attack orders. Once both sides have confirmed their orders for that phase, the attacking side's attack orders will take place before the movement orders. This is the first spot where it gets tedious. You'll spend so much time choosing where you want all your units to move to, only for them to be killed off and your time strategizing to be wasted. Then you'll switch who was in the attacking phase and who was in the movement phase. While you're in the attack phase, you can view where the enemy plans to move their units. When the attacks take place, there's this cool animation that plays to show the conflict. It's dumb, it's repetitive, but hey, the low quality animations and the retro style kind of reminds me of those old arcade shooters. You know, the ones where you gotta shoot the same guy in a trench coat over and over again. During the movement phase, your goal is to jam or block the enemy. Units can't move past an enemy, so blocking is used to prevent the enemy from moving too far past you. Jamming is just an annoying name for flanking. Units that are being flanked will receive more damage from attacks. You want to utilize blocking to prevent your units from being jammed. On the DS, the upper screen is used to show the enemy's plans. On the PSP version, you need to hit R1 to navigate to that screen, but it always seems like the enemy is locked in their order before I can get there. And once the enemy's locked in their orders, it's impossible to see which unit is moving to where. Now this could be because I'm using a... What's that? You're saying I shouldn't put that in the video? Oh, you want me to read this instead? Okay, my lawyers have provided me with a written statement. All footage in this video was recorded using legally purchased copies of Tom Clancy's ENDWAR on legally acquired devices licensed to operate said product. The use of emulators is an unethical practice and there is no place for it at Ice Cold Snake Industries. Please direct all further inquiries to insert firm name here. Guys, I think you were supposed to replace that.
I got the worst attorneys.
Even with being able to see what the enemy plans to do, this game is f***ing hard. I've played about 10 hours of this game already, and I have no idea how damage is supposed to be calculated. Every unit has 6 hit points. Each unit also has this absolute mess of a stat sheet. It's not explained anywhere what all of this stuff means. So this one means movement range, and this one means attack range. But what does 6 armor mean? What does 12 strength against this unit type mean? What does 5 bars of armor bonus mean? If my tank only has 1 bonus, does the tank get less armor than it already has? Or does it get only a 1 out of 5 bonus? Hey, guys, everybody, let's do math. If a unit attacks for 12 strength with a 3 strength bonus against an enemy with 5 armor and a 5 bar armor bonus, how much HP damage should they take? You're probably thinking 5.
Wrong, 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 wrong. Wrong, 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 wrong. You're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong.
Yeah, no, it took 4 HP damage. I'm serious, guys. I tried searching everywhere to figure this out. It's not part of the tutorial. It's not listed in the manual. And remember, not a soul has done a write-up or a video about this. So basically, I just gave up on playing it because I got tired of thinking I was going to kill off a unit, only for the unit to survive and wipe me out. Or I would overcommit attacks to killing off a unit rather than queuing up attacks onto other priority targets. So this isn't ENDWAR. It's got the ENDWAR name, it's got the ENDWAR faction logos, but this ain't it. For the first few missions for each faction, whenever you confirm your orders, it shows this cutscene of a satellite receiving your orders and relaying them to your units. You know, that sounds really cool, right? Because it's like, oh, hey, you know, here's the commander. You're sitting in your ivory chair. You're telling your units on the ground what they're doing. You know, the information's got to get there. It'd be really cool to see all these different near future. No, it's just a still of the effects satellite that fires their WMD laser in the console versions. It's ripped right from the cutscene. Now, I fell for the bait. When I was playing this for the first time as the effect, I thought it was really cool, but man,
It takes so long for this to play between every phase. I was finally glad when it was gone for the 3rd or 4th mission, and they don't even have the decency to change the image for each faction. If you never played the console versions, you just think this was some random satellite. It has no bearing on the overall theme of ENDWAR. This is the satellite that fired the laser that started World War III. Nope. There's no variety in units between the factions. You've just got a different color for each faction. They didn't even take the time to make the SGB green. Instead, they're red. Why? Because red is bad. There are no WMDs. Nope, none of them. Gone. There are no uplinks, no mission supports, no special abilities, no voice commands. I mean, to be fair, I wouldn't expect the DS to handle voice commands, but it's pretty much the main selling feature for ENDWAR, and I'm sure there are plenty of people out there that bought this version without realizing it because the marketing told you that ENDWAR had voice commands. I already touched on how the unit types are different, but let's dive into that. In the console version, there are 7 unit types. I've gone over them in full detail in my retrospective video. If you haven't seen it, please click on the retrospective, please watch it. I love that game. It's a full nostalgic trip down memory lane, and it's awesome. In this version, though, there are heavy infantry, light infantry, scout vehicles, tanks, heavy tanks, amphibious transports, transport ships, AA guns, AA missile launchers, speedboats, submarines, cruisers, aircraft carriers, combat helicopters, transport aircraft, fighter jets, bomber jets. I mean, Jesus, tap dancing Christ. Do you think that's enough? Actually, this is where things get kind of interesting. If you go back and you look at some of the concept art, the developer interviews, and some of the history surrounding ENDWAR, you'll find that the developers originally intended for the game to have jets and boats and different variations of helicopters as part of the player's battalion. At some point in development, they decided to slim down their scope, but there are still remnants of the files and the models in game. For instance, there's artwork for the Russian battleships and the submarines, and off in the edge of the map for Copenhagen, you can find a model for an effect ship. Obviously, the IP was handed over to Fanatics early on in development, and they either weren't kept in the loop about the changes, or they had gotten too far into development to really make any changes. But the change that is the most disappointing is that units are nameless, faceless drones. Units don't have code names like Saber or Rapier. Now, if you're not sitting down, please sit down. Units don't persist between battles, and they don't get upgrades or rank up. It's like all the fun of ENDWAR was sucked out in service of this weak strategy puzzle game. The real ENDWAR's creative director, Michael DePlotter, said in an IGN interview that they wanted to create a Pokemon-like ownership of the units. And that design decision is why so many of us still love this game. There's really nothing quite like it. If you're not gonna include that, you shouldn't use the ENDWAR name. Well, that about covers it. What do I think of ENDWAR on the DS?
Betrayal!
What?
Betrayal! Betrayed me! This game sucks!
It has almost nothing to do with ENDWAR, and having the ENDWAR name on it is more of a hindrance than a benefit. There are so many good design decisions that the real ENDWAR made that this doesn't have. They completely missed an opportunity to make this into a turn-based RPG set in the ENDWAR universe. Just imagine it for a moment. You're leading a team of Saber, Safecracker, Olympus, Danube, Longbow, Onyx, and Descartes on missions throughout the world, all the while gaining experience, leveling up, and getting player-purchased upgrades as you progress through an effect-focused, story-driven campaign to capture Washington, D.C. and Moscow, and to put an end to World War III. And you'd have different campaigns, one for each faction. Now, doesn't that just sound beautiful? Instead, what we have here is a game that warrants the term shovelware. They just wanted to be able to say that ENDWAR was released on portable consoles so they could appease their shareholders. If this was your only experience with ENDWAR, I feel sorry for you. There is a decent on-the-go strategy game here, but if they had followed the design of the real ENDWAR in the slightest, this game could have been something truly amazing. Those of you who never played this version, you really didn't miss out on anything, and you have the great fortune of only having experienced the real ENDWAR.
Yeah, this is ENDWAR.